So the big deal is, how do you transition from an animatic into an animation? As you might recall from last time, I have multiple scenes in my animatic here. So what's the process? How do we work from this? As you might remember, I got this set up so that it would run a certain amount of time. It looks like I've got it to run about a little less than 8 seconds for this first scene. I've got 2 audio layers. I turn that off in the recording of the video just because I don't want it to block out my instructions here. But let's say that you've set up your animatic, you're totally happy with the length of the scene. Once you've got your audio in there, things are looking good. Where do you go from here? So you'll notice that I made, if we zoom in on the layers, I have a main content folder. I'll pop this open. And let's go ahead and just look at what's on this content. So in here, you can see I've made 3 layers. There's a background, there's cars, and there's this guy. And it's going to vary depending on the scene that you have, how much stuff you have on the scene. If I play this, you can see that the guy is moving back and forth in the way he's talking on the phone, and that there's some cars zipping by. All right, so it's pretty much the way I wanted it. It's a little rough, but I kind of like the look of this. It's all right. The background is, I've got it locked down here, but notice the background's completely static. I used this fluid brush with a pressure-sensitive tablet to do some of the drawing here. Built out a couple of rectangles so that I could just have this background and street, all of that kind of stuff. So that's pretty straightforward and easy. The next item were the cars. And as we look here, you'll notice if you look carefully, the car actually has rotating wheels. And it's actually one symbol. In the front, it's just kind of the normal car. Let's come in here and I'll go to properties. Let's look at the object here. And notice it has no color effects, right? So it's just that normal brightness. Well, further on, if I click on object, it's still the same graphic, but now I've applied a tint color effect, makes it look a little further away. That's a great little trick if you're ever wanting to do that. And all I did was flip it with the free transform tool to get it to drive by twice. I just copied this setup. Let me select it a little bit more like that. Right click and choose copy frames. And then further down the road, sorry, that's a bad pun, I had this all selected, right click, and I chose paste frames. Let's just pretend there was nothing there. And you can see it puts in that same car zipping by. Real easy trick if you ever need to do the same motion just later down the road. The car itself, let's look at that in the library. Notice I made a folder called Scene 1, so it stores, you're going to start to have a lot of stuff, right? So organize things so that it's easier for you to keep track of stuff. So here's the car, and if I double click on it, you can see it's got 2 layers. The layer in the back just has the body of the car and kind of this fun little drawing I did. And then the layer in the front has 2 wheels. If we look in properties, notice that it just says wheel, property of the wheel. And then if I double click on that, you'll notice that there's another graphic here, wheel embed. And I did that just so that I could rotate the wheel. So I rotated the wheel once clockwise, or I'm sorry, counterclockwise. Added 2 of those to the car, and that does a full rotation. I ran it for a little bit longer than the length of the scene so that I knew that it would last in the scene. And then we'll just come back to the scene here, and that's all there is to the car. So remember, whenever you need complex animation or complex motion, don't make multiple layers. Make a car or whatever you want to make out of it, and build it there. By the way, remember that since this is a symbol, I could modify this at some point. So maybe I don't like the way that the back of this thing looks. Maybe I want to have something that's a little more elegant. So I could come in and just get my eraser tool. Let's just get the eraser here. Click away. And maybe I come in and I trim off just that bottom. Since it's made out of a rough vector, I can come in now and select that bottom part and trim it away. Doesn't look great, but I think you'll see the point here. There we go. Come back to scene 1, and now wherever we see that car, it's got that adjustment on it. So remember that symbols are something that can be edited. So when you're roughing in your animation, you don't have to have all the symbols be perfect at the time. You just need to know what you're going to have for symbols, and then fix it from there. These wheels look kind of big, so I might decide to scale them down, and I can because it's all symbol based. So that's a great thing about working with symbols, is you can come in, you can edit the symbol and fix it. So anyway, those are the cars. I just brought them in 2 different sizes and tinted that background. Let's go ahead and lock down that layer. And then the final layer was this guy. So how did I draw in the guy? Well, first of all, what I did is I hid these 2 background layers, and that gave me the ability to kind of see my animatic the way it was drawn. And let's go in and edit the guy. I'm going to first hide the top layers. And you'll notice that what I did is I made this guide layer. That was the very first thing I did. I made a guide layer, pardon me, and to make a guide layer, you just right-click and choose guide. It won't show up in any animation. You won't get this funky blue spot showing up at all. So guide layers are terrific. Just to drive the point home, I also went into properties for the guide layer, and I set its opacity to 50%, just to kind of remind myself that this is a guide layer. And then I just went in with the brush and painted over this so that I could get basically the same size of my animatic. I liked the way that that was drawn, so I just sketched that in. So that's my guide layer. And then I started just kind of layering up. So I started with pants and this hand and the neck here. So if we zoom in a little bit, you can see that I've filled these in, knowing that I'm going to have a suit layer on top of that. So let's come down here. I'm going to show the suit before I show the arm. So here's the suit. It's just sitting on top. Notice that all the clunkiness of that hand and where the neck is here, that gets all trimmed, looks nice. And then I went ahead and I made an arm layer. The arm layer here is an actual symbol. And to drive this point home, let's hide the suit layer above it, or at least I can turn it into outline mode so you can kind of see. And with the arm layer selected, I moved its pivot point before I started anything. I made a motion tween, and I just randomly moved it or rotated it back and forth a bit. And then the key thing is that I copied this first frame. Go back one. Yeah, so, and this is a good thing to be aware of. Sometimes it's hard to get these guys selected, so you can zoom in. And I copied that frame. And then I came down to the very end and I pasted the frame right? So I did paste frame, and that guarantees that the beginning movement and the end movement are the same. Makes a nice seamless loop. So that's the arm. I put it beneath the suit layer. And again, if we hide the arm, notice that I came in and kind of deleted some of this outline just so that when the suit layer or when the arm is in there, as it rotates, it looks kind of normal as this cartoon is going to get. And then finally, I drew in the head layer, converted it to a symbol so that I could rotate it. Notice its pivot point's been changed too, so it's just rotating right on the base of the neck. And I did the same little trick. I just copied and pasted the front and the first and the end keyframes so that it is seamless. And then I just tried to make it look like the guy's kind of babbling into the phone, right? So you're going to have a variety of things like this. You might choose to use that guide layer as you're transferring stuff over. Let's go back to the scene. So there's my scene. Let's show the cars and the background. And if I run this again, get all of the motion. Right, does everything it needs to. The car layer, it stopped a little short. That can be problematic in some cases, so I'm just going to click on that and press F5. It's not really an issue because the car only is on screen here a couple of times. By the way, I have these extra keyframes just because I've been copying and pasting a bit in here. If you want to remove extra keyframes like this, just right click and then come up and just choose clear keyframe. When I do that, the length of the span is the same. It's just gotten rid of that extra keyframe, right? So come up, clear keyframe, and that's all taken care of. All right, so get this all set. And then the last thing I want to show you is that once you have everything ready to roll, you can hide your animatic. Now, in this case, it's hidden anyway because it's got all this stuff on top of it, but maybe I don't even want to export it out. So even if it's covered up, it's going to get exported out, and that's going to increase the size of my publish file. So to make this just as streamlined as possible, I could go through and delete it, but that's a pain in the neck. It'd be kind of nice to have that as a reference. I'll just hide this. And then the last thing I'll do is File, up to Publish Settings. By default, Include Hidden Layers is checked. I'm going to just turn that off. Press OK. And just to kind of drive the point home, I'll hide the background here too, just so that we can see that the animatic doesn't show up when it's exported. I'm going to choose Control, and I'm just going to choose Test Scene rather than the whole movie. Let's just test the scene out. And you can see he's sitting here talking, and there's no animatic, and there's no background. Right? So that's it. Obviously show the background and export that out when it was all ready to go, but that's how you create an animation on top of the animatic. Let the animatic do its job as a timing template, right? It lets you know how long you need to have stuff go, and then you're just going to make layers on top of it. And again, you might consider having a library, well, you will have a library, but in your library, making a folder for each one of your scenes, or at least scenes where the materials are unique to that scene. All right.